Today, we are taking a deep dive into an incredibly intriguing philosophical and spiritual text that basically demands we leave absolutely everything behind.
Everything.
Right, and by everything, I mean, it doesn't just mean your physical possessions. It means, your memories, your thoughts, your senses.
Yeah, your entire constructed sense of self.
Exactly. So the text we're analyzing today is titled Emptiness is Ultimate Nirvana, and it was written by Xu Feng in August 2023, with the translation edited by Ginyu. And our core mission for this deep dive is to parse through what I think is a massive central paradox.
It's a huge one.
Right. It's this idea of how achieving a state of complete, absolute emptiness is somehow like the exact equivalent of reaching the ultimate destination, which the text refers to as the Elysium world or ultimate nirvana.
And it is a radical proposition, especially for you, the listener, who is navigating a modern world where the prevailing logic is totally additive.
Oh, 100%. We always want more.
Right. We operate on this assumption that the peak of existence is achieved through accumulation, gathering more knowledge, refining our senses, acquiring more varied experiences.
Just piling things on.
Exactly. And Xu Feng's text aggressively challenges that baseline. So we're going to be exploring not just the specific terminology the text uses, but the profound structural implications it has for how you perceive the actual mechanics of your own reality.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I am naturally curious about the mechanics of that paradox. Like, how does a conceptual framework entirely defined by the absence of things hold so much spiritual and existential weight?
It's a great question.
I mean, where do we even begin to dismantle our current understanding to see it from Xu Feng's perspective?
Well, the foundational pivot requires us to look at the primary instruction manuals for these concepts, which Xu Feng claims humanity has basically been systemically misinterpreting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, the text points directly at the Heart Sutra, which, as you probably know, is arguably one of the most famous and frequently recited Buddhist scriptures in existence.
Right. It's foundational.
It is, but Xu Feng makes this really bold assertion that our historical reading of it is fundamentally flawed, and that its true name shouldn't be the Heart Sutra at all. It should be the Nature Sutra.
And we should probably clarify immediately that nature, in this context, has absolutely nothing to do with, like, forests or rivers.
Yeah, no, not at all.
The text is using nature to define the intrinsic essence, like the absolute underlying characteristics of existence.
Exactly. The distinction between mind and nature is the hinge upon which this entire philosophy swings.
Okay.
So when you read the famous line, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, Xu Feng argues that this principle applies exclusively to the state of nature, not the state of mind.
Got it.
In fact, the text takes it a massive step further and asserts that the mind, as an independent entity, does not actually exist.
Wait, really? The mind doesn't exist?
That's the claim. The text relies on the quote, the past mind cannot be grasped, the present mind cannot be grasped, the future mind cannot be grasped.
I have to admit, that is a tough premise to accept at face value. I mean, it creates this immediate ontological friction.
Sure.
Because if the mind doesn't exist, what is the entity that is currently processing this text, right?
Right. Who is having the thought?
Exactly. But looking at the temporal logic Xu Feng is using, that the past is already gone, the future hasn't arrived, and the present is just this infinitely vanishing point. It seems to suggest the mind is really just a rapid sequence of illusions.
That's a really good way to put it.
Is the distinction between mind and nature similar to, like, the mechanics of a film projection?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Because we tend to get entirely absorbed in the narrative of the light hitting the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
The drama, the movement, the mind.
The movie itself.
Right, while completely ignoring the blank, static screen underneath, the nature, which is literally the only thing that allows the projection to exist in the first place.
What's fascinating here is how that physical substrate analogy aligns perfectly with Xu Feng's definition of intrinsic essence. Yeah. The projection is transient, right? It can't be grasped because it is constantly changing frames. But the screen, the nature, is permanent, it's unconditioned, and it's completely empty of any inherent image.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
And Xu Feng argues that this nature is, in fact, Buddha. It is the ultimate reality. So if you fail to recognize that blank screen and instead spend your entire life chasing the projections, every spiritual endeavor you undertake is ultimately futile.
The text is totally uncompromising on that front, too. I mean, it explicitly states that if you don't perceive this underlying nature, all performative spiritual actions are totally useless.
Yep. Useless.
It lists reciting the Buddha's name, chanting sutras, observing fasts, keeping precepts, releasing animals, practicing charity, and worshiping with incense.
None of it works?
It's wild. You cannot shortcut your way to nirvana through behavioral modification or external rituals if your attention remains locked on the illusion of the mind.
And that renders purely performative spirituality obsolete within this framework.
Complete.
I mean, if your spiritual practice is just an ego-driven attempt to accumulate, say, good karma or secure a better afterlife, you are still operating within the realm of the projection.
You're trying to direct a better movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Rather than stepping outside the theater entirely. So Shifeng is redirecting the focus inward, stripping away those ritualistic safety nets, and demanding a direct confrontation with the fundamental essence of reality.
But let's follow that logic to its destination for a second.
Okay.
If we accept the premise, and we let go of the flickering illusions of the mind, and we arrive at this pristine, blank screen of nature.
The emptiness.
Right. The way the text describes that resulting state sounds remarkably stark. I mean, it sounds like an absolute void. Why would anyone want that to be the ultimate goal?
Well, that tension is exactly what the text addresses when it outlines the specific characteristics of this empty state. It basically forces us to confront our deep-seated fear of nothingness.
Yeah, because it is terrifying.
It is. So how does the Nature Sutra characterize this emptiness?
Well, it describes an absolute cessation. It states that all Dharma-like, all phenomena are characterized by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, they're neither tainted nor pure, neither deficient nor complete,
Right.
and then it just strips away the human experience entirely. It explicitly states there is no sensory experience, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. No forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, or mental objects.
Furthermore, it strips away the spiritual journey itself.
Yeah.
It notes that there is no suffering, which, is the traditional goal, but it also dictates that there is no origination, no cessation, no path, no wisdom, and no attainment.
So you are left with a state devoid of all conceptual and sensory markers.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because Su Feng strongly argues this is not a lifeless, dead emptiness.
Right, it's not a void.
The text claims this precise state is actually one of great freedom and absolute perfection, achieved after suffering is eliminated. It describes a state of complete harmony with the Tao. In fact, Shubeng provides a core equation to summarize this. It goes, emptiness equals formlessness equals selflessness equals ultimate nirvana equals the Elysium world equals Tao equals Buddha equals super celestial being.
It's quite the equation.
But I have to push back here.
Sure.
If there is literally no wisdom to be had, no attainment to be reached, no eyes to see anything, and no tongue to taste anything,
Yeah.
how does that translate to great freedom? Mechanically speaking, how is this not just a description of being an inert cosmic rock floating in a vacuum?
That's the paradox, right? If we connect this to the bigger picture of Eastern philosophy, we had to fundamentally reevaluate the function of our senses.
Okay, how so?
Well, we inherently view our eyes, our ears, and our cognition as tools of liberation, things that allow us to navigate and understand our universe.
Right, they're how we experience the world.
But in Shufeng's framework, these faculties are actually profound limiters. They act as restrictive filters.
Oh.
I mean, think about it. Your eyes only perceive a tiny, tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum.
That's true, just visible light.
Right. And your mind constantly compartmentalizes and distorts reality to protect your ego. Therefore, the removal of the senses isn't the removal of life. It is the destruction of boundaries.
Oh, wow. So the argument is that the senses are the very things anchoring us to a localized suffering state.
Precisely. Emptiness in this context is not a vacuum of nothingness. It is the ultimate unconditioned state of the Tao.
Okay, I think I'm following.
When you shed the extreme limitations of the biological hardware and, the grasping software of the mind, you aren't left with an empty room. You become the room.
You become the room.
Yes. You merge with the underlying fabric of existence without the friction of an ego trying to interpret it. That is why Shufeng can equate emptiness with supercelestial being or the Elysium world.
Because you aren't restricted anymore.
Exactly. It's an evolutionary leap achieved by deleting the restrictive operating system entirely.
Okay, that reframes the concept significantly. But it still leaves, I think, a formidable cognitive gap.
How do you mean?
Well, the phrase no eyes and no tongue still doesn't evoke the imagery of a paradise like the Elysium world.
Sure, yeah.
How does Rufeng bridge the gap between this rigid, almost clinical description of sensory deprivation and the actual lived experience of boundless joy that the Elysium world implies.
The text addresses this by clearly delineating the function of the sutras themselves. Zhu clarifies that the Heart Sutra, or the Nature Sutra, does not describe the true scenery of the Elysium world.
It doesn't.
No, it's not a descriptive text. It only outlines the methodology and the path to get there. It is a cognitive tool whose sole function is to urge the practitioner forward, basically commanding them to go, 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 towards the other shore.
Oh, I see. It's essentially the difference between the routing algorithm of a navigation system and the destination itself.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Like if you look at the raw data of a GPS taking you to the coast, it's just cold vectors, nodes, and commands.
It's just numbers.
Yeah. The algorithm possesses none of the qualities of the ocean. The map is entirely distinct from the territory.
The map only provides the necessary parameters for the journey. But to actually understand the mechanics of the territory, how the Elysium world functions dynamically, Xuefeng introduces a concept the text calls the universal key.
Right, the universal key.
And this key is designed to unlock all the mysteries of the universe. It consists of 3 interrelated elements: structure, consciousness, and energy.
Right. And according to the text, as long as a non-material structure exists, there is consciousness to mobilize all the energy of the universe.
Yes.
And as long as consciousness exists, it renders the universe full of vitality and vigor. This is the underlying mechanism that explains that phrase, emptiness is form.
Exactly.
But how exactly does a non-material structure mobilize anything? That sounds a bit contradictory.
Well, we have to look at how invisible forces govern physical reality. Consider mathematical laws or gravitational fields.
Okay.
They possess no physical form. They are, by our standard definition, empty.
Right. You can't touch gravity.
But they entirely dictate the behavior and flow of matter and energy across the cosmos. Xuefeng is essentially applying a similar quasi-scientific framework to spirituality.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, the non-material structure is the foundational architecture of the Tao. Consciousness acts as the catalyst, like the dynamic spark that interacts with this empty structure to mobilize universal energy.
Okay, let me see if I'm understanding the implication here.
Go for it.
If a person retains their mind and their ego, they are operating as a tiny, localized material structure. They are trying to process the infinite energy of the universe through a massive bottleneck.
Exactly.
But by achieving emptiness, by shedding the ego and becoming formless, you align perfectly with the non-material structure of the universe itself.
Yes, you stop resisting the flow. When the localized self is removed, your consciousness is no longer restricted to mobilizing the tiny amount of energy required to sustain your ego.
Because the bottleneck is gone.
Right. It merges with the non-material structure, mobilizing universal energy. This is why the empty state is described as possessing boundless vitality and vigor, rather than being some lifeless void.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
Emptiness provides the frictionless structure, consciousness provides the spark, energy provides the vitality.
Okay, so we have the map, which is the sutras, and we have the underlying mechanics, which is this universal key of structure, consciousness, and energy.
Right.
But that leads us to the practical application. How does an individual actually execute this transition? Because the text explicitly acknowledges that theory is incredibly easy, but firsthand experience is the ultimate challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
It states that all this theoretical knowledge is totally pale and inconclusive unless you actually cross over.
And Xuefeng illustrates this limitation using a really great analogy, the analogy of a pineapple.
Yeah, pineapple, right.
So, you can study the chemical composition of a pineapple. Someone can describe the interplay of tartness and sweetness to you in vivid detail. But no matter how precise the description is, your understanding remains as abstract as a reflection in a mirror.
Right, you're just talking about it.
Exactly. You cannot truly comprehend the reality of the pineapple until you bypass all that theoretical knowledge and physically take a bite.
Which naturally brings us to the methodology of taking that bite. How do we enter this state of emptiness to experience the true scenery of the Elysium world?
Well, Xuefeng states that the core mechanism is forgetting oneself to be completely relaxed and joyful.
Forgetting oneself.
Yes. And to execute this, the text points readers to the 8 methods of entry-level practice detailed in another of Xuefeng's works, titled The Free Holy Land, The Extinction and Emptiness, a Form of Dharma.
Gotcha.
Now, while the specific details of those 8 methods aren't unpacked in our primary text today, the very fact that Xuefeng references a highly structured step-by-step framework is philosophically revealing.
How so?
It underscores that achieving the extinction of form and forgetting oneself is not some spontaneous, accidental moment of enlightenment. It is a deliberate, practiced dismantling of the ego.
Which highlights a brilliant irony in the whole process, if you think about it.
What's that?
You essentially require an organized 8-step instruction manual
Right.
to teach you how to systematically do absolutely nothing.
Right.
You have to actively practice the art of forgetting who you are.
Because the ego's survival instinct is incredibly tenacious. It requires rigorous methodology to dismantle all those mental habits that keep us tethered to the projection on the screen.
Yeah, that makes sense. But just as the framework seems to solidify, Kuething concludes the text by dropping a massive paradox directly into our laps.
There we go.
Right. The text explicitly acknowledges a lingering contradiction. On one hand, Xuefeng provides the core equation stating that emptiness is the Elysium world.
Yes.
But on the other hand, Xuefeng states that emptiness does not describe the true scenery of the Elysium world,
Which sounds completely contradictory.
to say the least. And to resolve this, the text offers one final analogy. An apple is a fruit, but a fruit is not necessarily an apple.
Right.
So what does this all mean? I really have to voice some skepticism regarding that final analogy.
Fair enough.
If the core equation presented earlier relies on absolute equivalency like emptiness equals the Elysium world, it feels logically asymmetrical to suddenly pivot to an apple is a fruit, but a fruit isn't an apple.
I see what you're saying.
How does classifying one as a subcategory of the other actually resolve the paradox of them being identical?
This raises an important question regarding the limitations of language when dealing with non-dual philosophy. The text is forcing us to confront the boundary where intellectual categorization basically fails.
Okay.
When Xufeng equates emptiness to the Elysium world, it is stating an ontological truth. They occupy the same ultimate reality.
Right.
However, when we try to describe that reality, we run into the apple and fruit problem.
Because the description of emptiness is just the absence of things.
Exactly. The concept of fruit is an overarching, abstract categorization. It encompasses the apple, but the word fruit does not contain the crunch, the juice, or the lived sensory experience of actually biting into the apple.
Oh, I see.
In the same way, emptiness is the absolute foundational category. It's the absence of the limiting ego and the physical senses. But the Elysium world is the lived, dynamic, energetic experience of that state.
Wow, okay. The intellectual definition of emptiness, the no eyes, no ears aspect, is technically accurate, just as an apple is technically a fruit.
Yes.
But the rigid definition fails to capture the vitality of the experience. The conceptual map contains the destination, but reading the map is obviously not the same as walking the territory.
Exactly. At a certain point, the linguistic formulas collapse and only the direct experience remains.
That makes a lot of sense.
That is the ultimate takeaway of the pineapple analogy. You can analyze the paradoxes forever, but the intellect is merely the vehicle that drives you to the boundary. To actually cross over, you have to stop analyzing and start forgetting.
Man, that perfectly synthesizes the journey this text takes us on.
It really does.
We started by examining how redefining the Heart Sutra as the Nature Sutra fundamentally shifts our perspective. It basically forces us to stop analyzing the transient, illusory projections of the mind and instead focus on the unconditioned, blank screen of our intrinsic nature.
And we unpacked how that true state of emptiness is not some terrifying, lifeless void of sensory deprivation.
Right.
Instead, by shedding the limitations of the physical form, you align with the non-material structure of the Tao, allowing consciousness to mobilize the infinite energy of the universe into boundless vitality.
And crucially, we learned that relying on performative spiritual rituals or, merely reading the philosophical map is entirely insufficient.
It won't get you there.
To reach the Elysium world, you have to physically taste the pineapple by engaging in the rigorous practice of completely forgetting the self. And whether you're a lifelong student of Eastern mysticism or someone simply curious about the mechanics of reality, I think there's a profound practical application here for you.
Absolutely.
It is the jarring realization of just how much of our daily suffering is generated by our desperate, exhausting attempts to maintain our minds and strictly define our reality through our limited senses.
It takes so much energy.
It really does.
Yeah.
Xifeng is offering a framework that suggests the ultimate relief isn't found in acquiring more, but in the total relaxation of letting it all go.
It is a profound argument for just abandoning the luggage at the gate.
I love that.
But the text's requirement for ultimate liberation leaves us with a fascinating final philosophical puzzle to consider.
Ooh, all right. Let's hear it.
The methodology is clear. Entering the Elysium world and achieving this ultimate state of unconditioned freedom and vitality requires the absolute and total forgetting of oneself.
Right.
So if achieving the ultimate destination requires you to completely extinguish your identity, your ego, and yourself, then once you finally cross over to that other shore, who or what is actually left to experience the joy of it?